Welcome into the Digital Dispatch podcast presented by Freight School Playbook. I am your host, Blythe Brumleve, and today I am joined by businessman Demarco Thomas. You are the founder and the owner of a company called Metromax, who not only has dispatch services, but you also have outsourcing services as well. And today I want to really dive into sort of the lessons that we learn in all stages of life and how failure can bring us to that next level. And I lead with this because by all accounts, you're an accomplished businessman of several entities with no plans to stop. But before we dive into those successes, let's talk about a little bit about where you've been. So you were born in Montgomery, Alabama, which you call a shotgun house with 7 people, 1 bedroom, 1 bath, but filled with love. And you also joined the Navy at a young age, even stationed here in Jacksonville for a few years. So how do you think those 2 experiences at a young age helped you obtain that business acumen that you have today?
Sure. So growing up in Montgomery, Alabama, it was very humbling. I was the first person in my immediate family to pretty much leave Montgomery and live in another city on their own. 17 years old, relocated to Jacksonville, Florida, part of the U.S. Navy. And at that point, I wasn't really exposed to a lot of cultures, right? So when I moved to Jacksonville, joined the military, I met people from all different walks of life. And within my first 6 months in the military, I actually did a deployment to the Mediterranean where we visited about 10 different countries, from Malta, Spain, to Barcelona, to Tarragona, Spain, to Dubai, right when they were building up Dubai to what it is right now. And so I got the opportunity to meet some great people, experience some new cultures that kind of made me more worldly, made me more cultured as well, but also just showed me how big the world was, right, and how much opportunity it has.
And it also, I think, working in the military or being in the military, it gives you the opportunity to work with several people and really form that team environment. Is that where you, I guess, learned a lot of like leadership skills and team building skills?
100%. Leadership skills. I was terrible in school, so the military made me more disciplined, right? Put some rigor and some structure around me, and just made me more focused. I was an operations specialist when I was in the U.S. Navy, which pretty much is the guy who navigates and plans and coordinates the tactical movements of a ship. So I had to be very strategic and thoughtful in my process for developing our route for pretty much traveling through the ocean and traveling through canals and interacting with other freight liners that are out to sea.
So logistics started early then?
Very early. I was in logistics and I didn't even realize what I was doing. You know what I'm saying? Like the first couple of months, you don't even realize that you're steering a vessel that has 3,000 people on it, in the middle of the ocean where, it's not land or any other help for, thousands of miles away. And so, I was just a kid, 18, 17 years old, kind of just doing a job that I thought was cool and that put me in a different environment than the one I grew up in. Now,
a lot of people, when they join the military, they want to stay in for 20 years, get that easy retirement. What was the moment that you said, this is not for me?
Probably about 2 months in.
So it's pretty early.
Very early, very early. So, because like I said, I wasn't used to a lot of structure just growing up. So I was used to, moving at my own pace, kind of determining my own path of doing things. And the military is very procedural. Everything you do has an SOP related to it, a chain of command associated with it. So that was the biggest adjustment for me, like mentally. But at the same time, I needed it. I needed that structure, unbeknown to myself. But once I got in, I quickly said, okay, what can I do to get out? So while I was in, though, I was an excellent sailor. I reached the E5 in less than a year. The average time frame is usually about 5 years to hit E5. So once I locked in that, hey, I'm going to be in here for 4 years, I pretty much gave it my all. And at the same time, I pursued education pretty intensely. So by the time I was finishing my tour in the military, about 4.5 years later, I was already about 85% done with my degree at the University of North Florida.
And so what did you get your degree in?
Finance.
And how did you choose finance?
I've always been good at math, so the coursework was easy. The simple answer.
Yeah, that's go
Yeah.
where you're good at.
Yeah.
So with finance, so you're in the military, then you get your degree in finance. How did you end up in the trucking space? Because you said I'm a businessman. I'm not a trucking guru.
That's true. So after I graduated from UNF, I relocated to Atlanta, Georgia. First job was as a financial analyst with a company called CompuCredit. Worked there about a year. And then I moved to a company called NCR, which specializes in self-serve solutions in ATMs. So, the self-serve checkout machines that you see in Target and Walmart, ATMs more than likely were developed by NCR. So that gave me exposure to two things. Number one, it put me in a higher finance role where with CompuCredit, I was doing more receivables and accounts payable management.
Sure.
But at NCR, I was doing business unit management. I supported the IT division. So I saw everything from, the management of people, costs, bonuses, fringes, the allocation of software development across the country. And most importantly, I saw how they leverage outsourcing. I think at that time they were maybe 70% onshore. And what I mean by onshore, that's in the U.S., and 30% offshore. And during my 4-year tenure there, I saw them move from being 70% onshore to almost 40% onshore and 60% offshore.
Oh, wow.
So, and being the finance lead for the IT department, I was in those conversations with the entities and the vendors that they use to help outsource their business. So I saw it go from ideation all the way to execution to new state and fully operational.
And so they're really, I guess, using a model that you would use in the future is to outsource slowly, not just all at once.
100%. So again, going through the process, but then really understand that, hey, in the future, I'm going to take this skill set and this learning and apply it to something that I will own and operate, which eventually happened. So I left NCR, went to Home Depot for a number of years as a regional financial manager. There, I wasn't really into the numbers. I was really going into business units and determining what are their weak areas financially, and then providing solutions to that, whether it's tools, systems, outsourcing, or people. Making management recommendations. Hey, this guy ain't gonna cut it, or this guy needs to go to a finance 101 class. Right? He's a good people leader, but he's not good at adjusting his P&L according to changes in business. So I was there about 2 years, and then I went to Cost Communication, which was my last corporate job as a senior finance manager. And there I managed field operations, which is the technicians that actually go into the field and install cable. So I learned a lot about logistics again, supply chain management, delivery process, ETA time management, SLA optimization. All those different things that once I got into trucking, I felt comfortable. So I guess that leads to how I got into trucking, right?
Because I think a lot of people, when they come into this industry, they come from other industries. It's very rare that people just grow up in the trucking industry, from my experience. And when you have that outsider's perspective, I think that gives you. It gives you a better grip on reality, sometimes for better or worse. But for you in particular, you started up a trucking company with one truck, and then from there your business grew. But did it start as a side hustle, or did it start as as soon as you decided you wanted to get into trucking, that was your full focus?
100% side hustle. So childhood friend who joined the trucking industry out of high school. I got a CDL license, drove for a couple of big carriers, just wasn't happy, right? He started to see some of the invoices associated with some of the loads he was carrying and noticed that, hey, the company is getting paid a lot of money versus the pennies on the dollar they're paying me. So being, I was one of his close friends in finance, hey, do you mind looking into this? Maybe this is a good opportunity. So did some research about 3 months into just the stability transportation and logistics. That's what really stuck out to me. And after doing some thorough research on just some of the return on investment options I had, I decided to go buy a truck.
Hmm.
And we bought our first truck April 2016. Wow.
What kind of truck was it?
It was a 2010 Freightliner Century.
Nice.
It was a piece of shit. Excuse me.
No, you're good. This is a cursing free invite, or
okay.
I don't know, cursing encouraged, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever the mood dictates.
It was trash. It was the worst investment you could make. And we bought it from a well-known big carrier who pretty much, runs trucks in the ground and sell them. I didn't know that, right? I just thought it was a, finance guy. Look at
Sure.
what's on this. This is way below the market. Let's take this one. Like I'm investing like it's real estate or something. Like
right.
I can go and rehab it, but you can't rehab a truck, right?
You can't build it out.
Right.
No.
So we got into it. 3 months. We had a budget of spending about 30, and 3 months in we were at 60 negative. Right. And this is from a finance guy. So that tells you it's not really about knowing just the numbers. You really have to know the business itself in terms of operations, relationships, and what are the drivers, and what kind of deals are you actually signing related to the equipment that you're managing. So I spent the next 3 months pretty much cleaning all that up, and I literally used to walk in my office and close the door and just work on my trucking company.
So that I would imagine that was like your first kind of, because starting a business is tough as hell. And so from going as your full-time job and you're starting this side hustle, what was your first, I guess, like, oh shit, I'm in over my head moment?
It didn't take long. Probably about 3 weeks in. 3 weeks in.
Kind of like the military.
Yeah. When I started to run the numbers and bounce it against what I projected, I was so far off that I knew I had to just dive in. Either I had to dive in or get out. And being that I had, my friend, he left his job as a truck driver with a stable company to start this with us. So I couldn't bail out on him, right? I was locked in, and just like anything, when I lock in, I usually deliver.
And knowing that, do you have, I guess, a lesson that you wish you would have known right when you started?
Sure. I wish. I'm not really a course type person, meaning that I'm really hands-on learning. So I wish I would have took an internship or got some kind of mentorship where it would better prepare me to make that step in the transportation. I think in addition to knowing exactly what I'm getting to and then leveraging the relationship that experienced person already had, I would have been way better off and way more successful quicker. But at the same time, I learned what not to do. And
sure.
There's no better way to remember what not to do than to lose money.
Right.
So that helped as well.
Sure. And so from that perspective, numbers are everything whenever you're starting a business. You know that. Now, when someone comes to you for outsourcing needs, because one of your verticals is outsourcing, where are the common areas that they're messing up in their business?
The biggest thing is they haven't mastered their craft themselves, right? So they would come to you wanting to leverage your back office team offshore, but they don't have the SOPs in place or how they want the outsourcing component to plug into their business. They're looking for the outsourcer to provide strategy, where really the outsource division is for execution. You as the owner or as the company provide the strategy and they execute according to that strategy. So that's the biggest disconnect I see to people who want to get into leveraging outsourcing.
That is a good topic that you bring up, because I've actually had experience with working with a white label marketing agency, and I let them handle the web development for a client of mine, and it was essentially a disaster. And I had to end up doing the entire website over again, lost money on the project, and that's like kind of goes back to what you said earlier. You don't really learn until you start losing money. And that was a situation where I felt that I should have been better about my expectations. And is that part of, I guess, the process of when a company decides to hire you for their outsourcing needs? Do you go through that strategy session with them to tell them, like, this is what you need to make sure that you have in order before we even start this process?
Sure. We have a couple of discovery calls where we really go through where they're currently at, what they want to accomplish, and kind of what we see as far as gaps and what they want to accomplish. And honestly, we've told a couple of clients that, hey, we're not the best company for you, or you're not ready at this point to engage us, simply because we want our success rate high. right now we got a 100% success rate with every client we've touched over the last 2 years. And so we pride that in our vetting process. We know when a project is too big for us or too small or outside the scope of our skill sets. And we will be upfront in terms of not wasting their time or money about that.
Now, going through all of these different processes, do you have a lesson that you've learned the easy way? And I use quotes here because it usually like a mentor is coming into play. Do you have a lesson that you've learned the easy way and a lesson that you learned the hard way?
As far as outsourcing, what I learned the easy way is hire good people. And that doesn't, it's not bound to just U.S.-based people or people who are offshore. Solid managers, employees, and coworkers are essential across the board. So what I easily learned in transition from corporate America is that if I hire people who complements my weaknesses, then I usually perform well. What I learned the hard way is when I hire people that are similar to me and, see things as I see them, normally it doesn't go to its full potential.
So you're not getting challenged, I guess, from your viewpoint.
Exactly. I'm big on not hiring a lot of yes men, a lot of people who are going to agree with exactly my approach is. I like to challenge people, and I like to be challenged as well because I think that's where you get the diamond out of the rough.
Sure. So I also heard that one of your first hires in your trucking business was a fast food worker. How do you think that those skills transfer over? Because I'm a former waitress, so I feel like that has helped me in my life with being able to talk to people, start conversations with people that I don't know, upsell them, get a better tip, that sort of thing.
Start a podcast.
Exactly, that too.
Yeah.
So it helps you make those connections in a way that are, I guess, some other people see as unconventional. So, but that you did the same thing as far as hiring a fast food worker instead of hiring, talent from, that just graduated from a logistics school. Why did you take that route?
Experiences, transferable skills, and coming and being an entrepreneur who didn't come from the background of traditional logistics, right? And knowing that I can make the transition because, I was determined enough, smart enough to a certain level, and also I had an open mind. So if I see just some core characteristics of a person that have not, let's say, the direct experience, but the transferable skill set, I'm willing to make that investment in them. And I'm not, even though I went through the traditional education program, and UNF is a great school, right? I had a good time there. I'm more into relationships. And I think if you have someone who can build relationships and show a certain amount of value in a certain space, then they don't really need the education.
Sure. I mean, definitely it is, especially from like a people skill. If you can deal with a variety amount of people that are coming into a restaurant, a regular restaurant or a fast food environment, you're probably used to dealing with a lot of truckers that are going to be calling in.
You can adjust on the fly.
Right.
You know how to deal with different personalities and tempers, which is crucial, right? Because you're talking to gentlemen who own their own trucking company. And so, they have a certain kind of macho presence about them, and you got to be able to know when to tone it up in terms of speaking up for yourself, but sometimes tone it down and just listen. Right?
Yeah, that's key, I think.
And I think you get that out of certain industries like the restaurant industry.
Yeah, because it's definitely it's a lot of stress.
Yeah.
And if something goes wrong, they're going to let you hear about it, which I know a lot of drivers will do the same.
Right.
Now, we're going to get into our next sort of section and talking about collaboration over competition, which you are a big fan of. And you said in an interview that I don't know everything, I look to learn, and there's power in numbers. Now, you obviously have already touched on the power of outsourcing at a fundamental level, but what was the first light bulb moment that you said, I can provide this service for other companies?
It was a natural transition. A friend of mine who I was networking with in transportation, honestly, I found him at a truck stop. He had a couple of units. I was there looking for a driver. He was there serving his units, and I just introduced myself. Like, I got no problem, connecting with people and reaching out, especially if they got some value that I'm interested in. And he was actually changing the turbo at that stop. And, I was like, wow, he's changing the turbo here. Like his truck's everywhere. Whatever. So, walked up to him, introduced myself, and getting to know him, I learned that, he had 10 units and he was all managing it himself. And he had like different tricks and tactics he used to, coach his drivers, repair his equipment, and get certain lanes of freight. And that kind of sent me down a path of, okay, if I can meet 10 other guys like him, then I'm gonna end up being him, right? And so meeting him, he exposed me to another guy, right? And that guy exposed me to another guy. And I'm very good at building and maintaining relationships. I know I kind of figure out what value people are looking for, in friends and people they associate with. And so if I can cater to that, I cater to that. And then I would hope that same value is exchanged with me. So over time, that 2-year stretch, I started to just have people in my network who I just reached out because I had problems on the road. Like, hey, man, my trailer just broke down in Wyoming and I can't find a technician. What would you do? And so it just started naturally. But over time, those natural relationships developed into something where we're communicating every other day, because it's just like you become like a fraternity. And once I established certain services, like using offshoring to help with my dispatching, BOL processes, etc., and they saw it was successful and I was telling them about it, they wanted that same program. They wanted that same system. And so little by little, they start to trickle in. And I realized, like, wow, I got 10 carriers that I'm supporting and I haven't done no marketing.
That's right? The power of word of mouth.
Power of word of mouth. And so at that point, me and my partner decided, hey, let's really double down in this dispatch business, make it a service offering that we know is going to be well received and promoted. And we promoted it differently. Most people who go after carriers go directly at the carriers. I never tried to market directly at carriers. I always went to the verticals that supported carriers, like the insurance company, right? I'll go to the insurance company and say, hey, I know the prime reason you're in business is for carriers being able to pay their premiums. How about you partner with me and I'll make sure that carrier earns enough revenue to pay their premiums. Hey, factoring company, you don't make revenue unless carriers have loads to pick up and deliver. How about you partner with me and allow me to make sure they have loads to pick up and deliver?
So talk to me about the outsourcing process of what did you feel like initially you could absolutely outsource, and then what was something that you wanted to keep control of?
Sure. So I thought the admin side, like invoicing, driver settlement, payroll, it was non-verbal in terms of not customer facing, not talking to drivers and owners. So I thought all of the non-verbal functions could be replaced, whether that's technology or offshore, manually using my team, which we did easily. That was an easy transition. After we kind of mastered that, my partner, actually, I got to credit him for this. He said, I think we can dispatch offshore too. I think that our agents, our VAs that are in India can speak directly to drivers and brokers and shippers, find freight and communicate it and get them serviced. And I doubted that because trucking is a very blue collar industry.
That was going to be my next question, right? Is how did you get any kind of pushback? Because I would imagine that there was a little.
Well, I did, of course. Yeah. Of course. But luckily, I had my own fleet of trucks. So I started internally first. And I saw how my drivers, how receptive they were, right? And kind of what they look for. Was it the accent, right? Or was it the knowledge? It could be a combination of both, but it could be one or the other. And what we ultimately determined that even though there was a slight accent, I mean, most of the agents that I hired, they work for Expedia, Amazon, Chase Bank. They come from a customer service background, supporting those industries in India already. So the workforce and the talent pool is already there. But what I had to train them on was transportation, right? The lingo, the slang, 10-4.
Yeah. Little things
Stuff
like that.
yeah.
That would be tough to, I mean, even culturally from a U.S. perspective, like a lot of Americans don't know what trucking lingo is.
Correct. So it was really getting them over the language barrier, and the trucking lingo was the biggest challenge. And that took some time, right? And it took some trial and error, just to be honest. But after a couple of months of doing it internally myself, I saw we struck gold, right? And at that point, establishing a database, right? We got a database of commonly used words, terms, training that we take a dispatcher through before we actually put them in production. And
so why India and not, a lot of, other offshore, nearshore companies, they're going to like South America, Colombia, Brazil. Why India and not, a nearshore company?
2 reasons. Number one is my partner in Metromax is Indian. He's from India, born and raised. So that relationship and connection was easy in terms of starting a business there, getting reliable people, and driving it. The second thing is, there's been outsourced operations out of India for decades, right? So there's a well-developed talent pool, everything from the education system pushing them to making, English a common language, because, a lot of American companies actually employ here. It was a wide talent pool. And so with that big of a talent pool and skill set as well, and success in outsourcing for decades, I couldn't see myself going against that. There are other nearshore countries and companies that are starting to rise in the space. But I think the infrastructure in India is just better. Infrastructure in terms of internet,
right,
which is crucial.
Because they talk about how that's going to be the next big global market is India. China has had its run for a while and probably still will be on a very good run. But India is the next one as far as like telecoms and companies setting up there. Any plans to, or do you currently have, dispatching, trucks in India itself, or just in the U.S.?
So just in the U.S., but right now we have 75 associates in India. That supports the various companies that I run, as well as the companies of our clients, right? And we recently just hired a software development team, because that's kind of the phase I want to get into. I want to get into freight tech. It's a hot niche.
It is.
And being someone who's worked operationally within logistics, I see a lot of opportunities for technology to come in and make things more efficient and optimized. And so we hired a tech team, but not only to do tech within logistics in the U.S., but also look at opportunities in India. And so now I'm starting to look at those ventures. But there's a lot of, it's the small things like Uber, right? There's no Uber in India, but there is there is a form of Uber that's there, but it's not as developed or as advanced. So it's a lot of opportunities there.
And you touched on freight tech, which has just been exploding in the industry over the past couple of years. It feels like new companies are popping up every other day. Is there any new tech that you see that really excites you, that as far as like operational concerns or even, marketing and sales, any kind of new tech that's entered the space?
I think digital brokering has been a game changer, like what you see with Uber Freight, Convoy, Transfix is doing. That actually impacts my dispatching business, right? Because they go directly to the carrier, which removes a dispatcher, removes a broker, and it can go straight from shipper to carrier if they want to, digitally. So I think that's a very disruptive industry that a lot of people get into. TMSs, with a lot of the changes in federal laws and regulations, and logistics just becoming more complicated. I think TMSs are very hot right now. So it's really like looking at those platforms. Either you make something that's completely different from them, or you just see a gap that they have and capitalize on that.
Which is with a lot of TMSs. They seem like they want to be a jack of all trades and a master of none.
Yeah.
And so that's my experience with a lot of, I guess, the older school TMS systems is it's frustrating to say the least, especially when they start getting into like the marketing world. And I'm like, well, they're doing that wrong. They're doing this wrong. And so you kind of start like picking it apart. But your business requires a lot of people management, both offshore and here in the States. Now, 2020 being sort of as crazy as it's been, how have you guys sort of tackled the remote work life, the mental health aspect, throughout, just all of 2020? It's been a huge mental health challenge. How have you guys tackled that?
Well, my team in India, we've always worked virtually. So it was no adjustment in terms of repositioning my team in different places, from not working into the only change was, even though we were virtual from the U.S. to India, the biggest change was the fact that we couldn't even be in the same Indian facility anymore, right? Just like here, right? Most businesses and offices shut down.
Sure.
So people were working from home. So I just had to make sure everyone had the right connectivity, right, to pretty much operate on their laptop. Or that was the biggest adjustment, I think. Making sure people have the right data usage and pipes within their private residencies in order to support your business, and making sure they have the right computers as well. We had some laptops we didn't have a camera on because we wasn't doing a lot of video chatting, right?
Right.
And that became our norm now, is to use Microsoft Teams or Zoom to conduct meetings with clients and each other as in terms of internal development. So I would think the biggest change for us was really just embracing technology, not just through standard operations, but through just normal interactions as well. And from a mental health standpoint, we started doing virtual happy hours, man. We'll meet every Friday. Everybody, somebody would give a recommendation for drinks for this Friday, and everyone would try to secure those drinks, and we would have drinks and just talk about everything that didn't involve the company. Talk about
that's
family,
key.
Talk about COVID-19, whatever was going on in the news, but we made it a point not to talk about trucking and logistics. And so for us, that was a forced mental break every week, and it allows us to recharge, but most importantly, get to know each other. With so many team members that I have, it's hard to, meet every one of them, but number two, have the time to really dedicate to knowing them personally. And with coronavirus, when it first launched and we first had the announcements in terms of shutdowns, I think March and April, we pretty much can't really go anywhere. So I had all the time in the world just to sit back and call people and get to know them. So it was kind of a blessing and a curse. But with me knowing them, I knew how to better utilize and position them too, right? So over the last couple of months, it's certain people that were doing some roles that either I transitioned them to other roles because I catered to their strengths, or I knew they desired it and they were capable, and I, put them in position to succeed in that area.
From a mental health perspective, how did you guys, I guess, tackle that culturally with the employees over in India? Is there any differences, or is it really just connecting with people?
It's just connecting with people. Mentally, people just felt alone, right? And so for us, we just made sure the lines of communication was open. Like we run a 24/7 operation, even though I can't be available 24/7.
Sure.
We made time to be available as needed, and we did checks. And like I said, since you had more time in the day because you sitting idle in one place, it allowed us to check on each other more often. So I think checking on each other allowed us to pretty much get through it.
Yeah, definitely. It's important to have those. You don't realize until something like COVID hits how important those little like water cooler conversations are.
Really.
It's those interactions that you have on a daily basis without even meaning to. So being purposeful with your interactions, I probably went a long way with a lot of your employees.
Of course.
Now, switching gears a little bit to the last mile, which is it a new venture for you guys?
It is. So I just got into last mile delivery about, say 4 months ago. I landed a Amazon delivery service partner deal. So years ago, Amazon launched the Sprinter vans, the branded Sprinter vans, which you probably see on every corner now, driving around the city. And just recently, they launched the branded box trucks, which are the 16-foot and 24
I just saw those for the first time the other day.
Yeah. They're less than probably a year launched. Jacksonville was one of the first.
It was running at 10 p.m. at night. I was like, "Oof, they are working hard."
Yeah. So I launched with them, and it just opened my eyes because I'm from the over the road trucking, as far as fleet ownership and dispatch management and back office support. And so this was my first time getting into a business where the driver didn't require CDL. They were home every night. They touched packages. Most of the freight that I support is non-touch, so they're actually touching packages. So we started there with them in August with about 5 units. We're about at 27 units now. And honestly, I kind of fell in love with that model because if you look at the trucking industry, the biggest challenge with over-the-road trucking, in my opinion, is driver recruitment and driver retention.
Yes.
Right, CDL drivers.
It's like $90,000 in order to onboard a driver. And then if you lose them within 6 months, you just like lighting money on fire.
It's expensive. And not even the big carriers that have been able to solve it. They have pretty much the same attrition rate. And so I said, okay, I love transportation, but I would love to get in an environment where I have a better control and retention on the people who are behind the wheel. And Last Mile has afforded that to me because the biggest thing I know about being over the road is, guys want to be home more.
Yes.
Sometimes it's not even about pay. Guys want a quality life just like any other profession. And so now I have the opportunity that if you're over the road with me, you get tired and you want to, spend more time at home, you can, get into box trucks and, deliver and be home every day.
So being able to have that additional option helps the rest of your business function even better.
100%. It provides some flexibility.
And so with Amazon coming into the scene for a couple years now, a lot of logistics professionals were scared to death that this would be the end of their company, but you've sort of embraced that. How have you embraced that, and why have you embraced, such a big company that could potentially replace you one day?
The only thing constant is change, right? So if they're winning, why wouldn't I go and win with them?
True. Super team.
Yeah. Why would I go against a winning formula that they've shown for the last couple of years, right? And at the same time, I can learn, right? So when I got into the Amazon deal, I pretty much learned a lot about trucking and operational procedures that I did not know in running my over-the-road and dispatch business that I then implemented in them.
What were some of those lessons?
The biggest thing was compliance, right? Their compliance is A1 at Amazon, and the way they monitor it and the systems they use. I just didn't have exposure to those systems, right? At $1 billion company, they had plenty of time to research exactly what systems do what and how they need to be implemented and put in place to successfully run your business. So I pretty much had to have the opportunity to learn their infrastructure, and I can use that infrastructure, in multiple ways outside of Amazon if, that becomes the route I need to go at some point.
Now, outside of Amazon, last mile is probably last mile and reverse logistics is probably the trickiest part of the industry right now. Where do you think that most companies outside of Amazon are falling short?
I think most companies are embracing it. If you see Walmart, they embrace it. I recently signed a partnership last 30 days. That's why I'm in Jacksonville right now. Got a 2-for-1. I got the pleasure of meeting you.
That's right. You came down here just for this interview. And Walmart is the bonus.
and that's the bonus. My partner down here, Chris Bright, he actually started running a lot of freight through Sprinter vans just because of e-commerce demand. And so we got into the Sprinter van business about 30 days ago in Atlanta and in Jacksonville, Florida. And it's purely driven by e-commerce, right? You see Target embracing it, Walmart's embracing it, Kroger's embracing it. Bath and Beyond has embraced it fully, right? They've pretty much closed a lot of their brick and mortar locations and they're mostly just selling online.
Wow.
And what's crazy is they're selling the same amount of volume. And so as a CEO, you got to think, why would I need a brick and mortar store if my online business is generating just as much income with lower overhead and lower assets to manage?
Sure.
And so I think most retailers are shifting to that, and the ones that haven't and did not embrace it, they're kind of suffering right now.
So I heard an interesting theory that for a lot of like different malls around the country, they're going to be hit big as far as, just people losing that brick and mortar asset at the malls or at these other different locations. Do you see any kind of opportunity where this theory in particular said that it could be a distribution center and it could be a retail shop? Because people still like to come in and they want to be able to try clothes on. They want to be able to touch the merchandise. So there's a theory that you could have that environment set up in like a staging area, and then they can submit the order and then pick it up at the pickup distribution spot at that retail location.
Sure. I think you still have a combination of both, but I don't think you can be just a brick and mortar.
Right.
I definitely think you got to have some kind of online presence and platform. And with the growth in internet sales, like you said, it's a big boom in warehousing. I think warehousing is expected to grow 20% year over year for the next couple of years, just because of e-commerce boom. And people have embraced it. I was telling Chris this yesterday at dinner when we were there with a couple of people we do business with. My father's 70 plus, and before COVID-19. Nothing online. He walked right into Walmart or Kroger's and looked at it and bought it, and that's the only thing he trusts. That's the only thing he believed in. And now you can't even pay him to go to a store. He orders everything online.
It's wild to see how fast that has been expedited. Mm-hmm. That just changing all of our habits from getting used to taking a mask with you when you get into the car or get out of the car to just buying everything online. It's kind of wild.
And even these last mile delivery companies, they're not prepared for it. I mean, if you see the announcements from FedEx, UPS, Amazon, they're putting caps on shipments. They're saying that, hey, there's so much demand coming in that we can only deliver a certain amount per day to certain areas.
And it kind of hitting on that with, it's a huge capacity crunch right now. We have the record e-commerce deliveries. We still have everybody staying home because of COVID. Most people staying home. And then we have also the COVID-19 vaccine being shipped out. That's creating even tighter capacity. So how has Metromax been able to identify those last mile opportunities?
Really, we've just tried to pivot to the big retailers. Right? If they are putting caps on these retailers, then obviously these retailers have enough volume that if we put our assets and align our assets to them, it's a winning formula, and it's some longevity in that business. So we have been focusing on developing relationships with retailers like the Amazons, the Walmarts, the Targets.
Because they don't have the fleets to be able to handle all this capacity. So where else would they come to is companies like yours.
That's where third-party last-mile logistics wins and thrives.
So from a people and a tech perspective, what are the most important investments anyone working in last mile should make?
I think you should come in, people-wise, I think you should come in with a strong operations manager, right? Someone who knows how to lead operationally, but also identify systems to put in place to make that operational oversight more fluid, right? Last mile delivery, it's a lot of transactions, a lot of packages you're delivering. There's a lot of touch points in terms of customers, and you need the right systems in place that, number one, monitor the equipment, monitor the speed of the vehicle, monitor that the delivery actually happened, and monitor the driver's overall performance in terms of what's the package actually received? Are they scanning it properly? Avoiding theft, things of that nature. So, you need those systematic tools and the leadership operationally to implement them.
And so from, I guess, a tech perspective as well, is there anything that companies can do better? Is there anything that, I guess, from a tech perspective that is missing that you would like to see, or is absolutely crucial in order to run those operations?
I know two things, but since I hired a tech team, I can't tell you.
Sure. That's in the works.
Yeah, but I will say this. I would say technology-wise, over-the-road is very focused on. Over-the-road trucking is mature. It's something that's been going on for decades. So IT-wise, a lot of companies tend to focus on that. But last mile delivery is new, right? And it's growing. And they have just as many opportunities and challenges, if not more, than over the road. And so I would say from an IT perspective, last mile is kind of where you want to focus on, especially if you have people like Walmart and Amazon saying they're putting distribution centers, every 200 miles. Then what does that do to overall trucking? Right?
Just
Minimizes it.
right.
So, and autonomous driving, right? If you get a self-driving vehicle that can do a straight shot from Jacksonville down I-10 to San Francisco, staying in one lane, going one speed, it's possible.
How far off do you think self-driving trucks are?
I think maybe in the next decade. I don't see them going through a lot of metro cities, right, in the heart of cities.
Sure.
But I definitely see them running from long interstate patterns like down I-10 or down I-20 or up 95, and then getting to a point where they're exiting, and then another carrier grabs the trailer at that point and delivers it last mile to the facility. Right?
What about drones? Do you think drones have a place in last mile delivery?
I think they do. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you have a couple people that are testing, rover robots, right, in order to deliver packages.
I've seen that. I've seen like motorized like bicycles too, where the driver is on a bicycle and he's pedaling that around.
Yeah.
What a workout.
But again, that's demand, right? Demand drives innovation. So it's so much demand now that people are looking outside of just a normal workforce into technology just to get things done.
And I think it matters too, as far as like the landscape of the city, like the metro areas, like you were saying. If you can't get these big ass trucks in there, you got to be able to find other different solutions. I just think it's gonna be crazy if we look up in the sky and just see a bunch of drones flying everywhere, dropping packages off.
Right.
People are just gonna start. You're just gonna have guns shooting in the air, taking down the drones. That's gonna be the new porch pirates. All right, now switching gears a little bit again into sort of your personal inspiration. But before we get into, I guess, a little bit of the inspiration, your Instagram handle is Ask Demarco. So we got to know what's the I guess, the most important piece of advice that you find yourself repeating at an annoying rate that people just haven't listened to.
Should I get into trucking? And it's so broad, right?
Right.
I think that's a question of self first. But secondly, I think research answers that question. I think if you research different parts of trucking, number one, understand what you're strong at, and then say, okay, what part of transportation would that best suit? Is it the relationship part, or maybe I should be a broker, right? I love talking to people. I'm good at negotiating deals, or I'm very good operational and leading people, so maybe I should be on the asset side. So I think you got to self-assess first, and then based on your self-assessment, determine which of those niches make sense for you.
And then based off of your earlier advice, hire somebody that isn't the same as you.
Correct. Hire somebody that balances you out.
True. Yeah. Now, from a content perspective, you with your Instagram page, you focus on a lot of business quotes and quotes from you that you give out to people. Now, I want to know, where do you find inspiration from a sports perspective, a music perspective, and a business perspective?
Sports, big Michael Jackson. Sorry, not Michael
Wait.
Jackson. Michael Jordan.
Okay.
Big Michael Jordan fan. Was born and raised watching him. Chicago's my favorite team. And so I just get the grit and determination for him, right? And
I'm sure you watched that documentary.
Of course.
Yes.
Of course. Everyone did.
What was your favorite part from the documentary?
Flu game.
Yes.
Even while ill, performing at a high level and carrying his team. And that's the kind of leader that I look to be, and I try to be every day. I don't really let my personal endeavors stop my business from functioning and stop my team from succeeding. So I kind of cherish that. Is that music?
Yeah, music and business.
Music, I would say Jay-Z. He's someone who, come from a colorful background, a challenged urban background, similar to myself, but was able to pivot and become a force in the industry that he consumed. He went from a consumer to an owner. And so I appreciate and respect that.
And now, from a business perspective too, maybe he would fall into that category.
Yeah, he definitely falls in there from a business perspective. From a business, I'm new in business, right? I mean, I've only been out of corporate America about 3 years. So as far as entrepreneurs, I have like little like mini mentors. It's like little pieces of certain people that I take from them and I like, and I kind of build my own mentor. If that makes sense. And I love podcasts. I don't really read a lot of books. I think if you find that person on a podcast and listen to him, you can pretty much get a whole summary of his book.
Exactly. I'm a Cliff Notes kind of person.
Right.
I have stacks of books that I want to read that I'm never going to read.
Never do. And so I spend a lot of time on podcasts around niches or areas that I'm interested in. So I listen to a lot of transportation podcasts. Yours would be top of the list now that I'm here.
We made it.
Right. And but different things. If I'm interested in real estate, then I'll start listening to Bigger Pockets and other, real estate focused podcasts. And so that's been a good source for learning for me. Right. I'm not the traditional guy who will read a book for hours. Like you say, I buy them. Just sit there.
I feel like it's personally speaking, it's attention span. Yeah. I can read probably 100 internet articles a day, but to sit down and read a book is an impossibility. It's not going to happen.
You pay me to do it.
Yeah. It's like I'll start. I'm like, oh, this is good. And then I'll never pick it up again. Mm-hmm. All right. So you sort of mentioned about the lessons that you've learned from other people, but what is one thing that you did plan for, it heartbreakingly didn't work out, but now that you look back on it, you're thankful it didn't work out?
I would say, let me think about this one a little bit. I'd say the one thing that didn't work out that I'm glad it was a partnership I was trying to do in trucking. So I knew a guy, he had a larger fleet than mine, but I'm way more mathematic and way more operational inclined than him. But he had a lot of great relationships when it came to freight, right? Freight pays bills. So
more loads.
This guy is good at going into shippers and getting them to buy into his business and getting freight. But once he gets the freight in terms of managing his assets and managing the financials associated, he's not good. Maybe we're a good balance. And I kind of pursued him. Right. And the deal didn't materialize simply because of one reason. He wouldn't outsource. Right?
And that was his hard line in the sand.
That was his hard line in the sand. And so, and at first, it caused me to question why I was outsourcing. Like, hey, man, am I going to lose other deals like this because the person on the other end may be a little ignorant about outsourcing and not willing to embrace it? Should I really just calm down on the outsourcing thing and not mention it as much in terms of how I do my operations and how I structure my businesses? But 2 years later, I'm still here and he's not. And so, but at that time,
checkmate.
And so, at that time, it kind of crushed me though, because I thought I was going to be able to propel to another level with his skill set and his resources. But it just shows me that, hey, what's meant for you is meant for you.
Sure.
If that doesn't work out, continue down your path. And over time, it will work out.
So you said your biggest strength, obviously, so far, if everybody is still listening to this podcast, is that your biggest strength is thinking outside of the box. How have you stayed ahead of the change that's happened so quickly and drastically this year?
Number one, I embrace it. As soon as it happened, they're going to shut down the economy. I went into full, okay, it's never going to open again. Right. So let me build my business based on it never opening again.
So you thought from the beginning it's not going to open?
I knew it eventually would. Right. But
not this wait 2 weeks.
Not 2 weeks. No way. Right. It was too much panic. Right. And so me and my partner, we just decided to design our business around essential goods, essential needs, essential shipping, right? Relationships that we know if the economy shuts down, people may stop buying toys, but they're not going to stop buying water, right? So we pivoted and started to focus on those areas, and we made our team more technology inclined. I think everybody started to embrace technology a lot more, right? With
they
COVID-19,
sure did.
But we put a budget to the side for it, right? Instead of just saying, hey, we're going to do more in technology, it's like, no, we're going to go and get the best tools, the best systems, some system engineers, some software engineers, and we're just going to make sure that virtually we have a strong foundation.
Because you guys already had the experience working with the India team, so it probably helped you in the long run to get the U.S.-based team there faster.
It did. Like, the resource pool and talent was tapping in was just different, right? Their skill set was more customer service, accounting, process management, process associates, those kind of skills. Whereas the IT skills, a little more expensive skill set, definitely more expensive, but harder to actually lock down and recruit. But what happened was a lot of American companies shut down, and so those resources became available, right? And then financially, they became more acceptable to working with a company like mine. And so for us, it was a perfect opportunity for us to go in and snatch up talent, and that's what we did.
So it's like securing the talent as soon as maybe a team folds, and you're one of the first ones in there. Let me get the best players.
Right, and I think that's what most companies should do, and some of them did do that. Right, when a company fold, they went in there and got the best players. When a company fold, they went in there and got their best assets. The best trucks, the best trailers, and if they made those investments then, right now, they're doing extremely well, right? Because them assets are being fully utilized because freight is just booming, right? So, and truck prices are through the roof right now, and you can't even find a trailer to buy at a reasonable price. There's a backlog in trailers and truck orders right now.
And so how does that affect, I guess, the ownership versus the leasing market? Because you're really stern on leasing trucks, not owning them.
100%. So I don't think you should buy trucks for over-the-road trucking. And I think leasing just provides you a lot of more flexibility. So when COVID first hit, even the leasing companies took a big hit, right? And so you had companies like Penske and Ryder who had requirements like you had to be in business 2 years, you had to have a $10,000 deposit, waiving them. It was waiving all those requirements and just giving you trucks and trailers because it's better to take the risk and give it to you. If you don't meet those certain criteria, then it's just sitting on the lot for money.
True.
So now, I think, if you're getting in the game now and you don't have those same relationships, it's kind of tough to get equipment right now. You're paying a premium for it. I think the guys who kind of stayed with some of those vendors during the bad times, they're top of the list. And so, you may make a call to Penske or Ryder, they don't have any equipment. Well, I may make a call and they go find the equipment, whether it's in Atlanta or in a surrounding city or state.
That's wild. It's a good business to be in, but it's like you said, you have to be able to embrace that change. And speaking of embracing the change, we've seen a lot of it. 2020 is a year that a lot of people want to run from. A lot of businesses have failed. Insurance rates are crazy. It's tough for a lot of the little guys to stay afloat. So what tactics have worked for you that others can use in 2021?
You can control your costs, but you can't control your revenue. So I'm very big into controlling my costs. I spend a lot of time to make sure my infrastructure is cost effective and my dollars are going in the right place. And then I, of course, try to maximize my revenue and then my margins between determine the success of my company. So I think going into 2021, number one, you got to take the lessons from COVID-19 into play. But you also just got to look at ways to embrace technology. I think if you're a company and you don't have a technology budget, set yourself up to fail.
Absolutely.
And I didn't have one until COVID-19.
And you had to make one, and you made one.
And now we live in by one. So, yeah. All
right. Well, before we go, do you have anything else that you're working on or anything else, a piece of advice, maybe a little nugget of advice that you want to leave with people?
Yeah. As far as working on, I've kind of honed my chops in the asset-based side and the services-based side of transportation. And now we're really doubling down going into 2021 into software development and business process outsourcing for other businesses in transportation. So really focus on building a sales team to pretty much bring those services to market. As far as nuggets, I think logistics is where you want to be. I think logistics showed how powerful it was during COVID-19, where, we supplied a lot of families with the supplies they need to still live comfortably within their home, and the hat should be off to the truck drivers and, you know, everybody back office who kind of supported that whole initiative. And most importantly, I think it showed that if you want to be in a stable business that can move regardless of what's going on in the economy financially or what's going on in healthcare wise, logistics where we're going to be.
Absolutely. People always need stuff shipped. And truck drivers have proven their worth this year, even more so this year, going through everything with e-commerce and COVID vaccines and all that good stuff. Well, where can they find more of your work? Where can they find you and Metromax?
Sure. So Metromax, so we have 3 entities. We have Metromax Express, which is my last mile company. We're on all platforms, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Same with Metromax Dispatch. Looking for some entertaining content, go to Metromax Dispatch Instagram. I'm definitely big on LinkedIn. So definitely follow me or connect with me on LinkedIn. And also I have a small Instagram profile as well. So we're on all social media platforms, and you know we're here to network with people that can help us get to the next level, and also that we can provide assistance to as well from a business and a services standpoint.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time today. You personally flew in for this interview only, nothing else. So we appreciate your time, and we look forward to watching your growth in all of your business verticals.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, guys.